Hi, I'm Christian. No, I'm not wearing a shirt, and no, I won't put one on. Welcome to my baking series, Roll for Cake, where we use dice, my skills as an amateur baker, and the taste buds of my friends to create, bake, and rate weird and wacky flavor combinations. During last week's episode, we rolled for a Matcha Chiffon with a Maple Ganache. For those that don't know, a chiffon cake is a very light, airy cake used with egg whites, and then a ganache is normally heavy cream and some form of chocolate melted together. So it's very heavy, very sweet. So we have a light, slightly bitter, airy cake, and then a decadent, heavy, sweet ganache. So hopefully they balance each other out and they work together. But there's only one way to find out. Let's bake.
First of all, we're going to add 3 egg whites to the bowl of a stand mixer and put that in the fridge for 15 minutes to cool, as this is going to allow the egg whites to whip nice and easily. In a separate bowl, we're then going to grab the 3 egg yolks left over after those 3 eggs and add them to this bowl. We're then going to add roughly 30 grams of white sugar or caster sugar to the egg yolks, and we're going to start to whisk those until thoroughly combined and turning into a pale yellow. Once a nice pale yellow, we're going to add roughly 40 mils of a neutral tasting oil such as vegetable oil. In addition to this, we're going to add a quarter of a cup or 60 mils of water. We're then going to mix these until thoroughly combined, nice and homogeneous. And once this is done, we're going to set this aside so that we can start to work on our dry ingredients. And in yet again another bowl, we're going to start working on our dry ingredients, which we will begin with 75 grams of cake flour. And we're going to add a large heaping tablespoon of a good quality matcha powder. Make sure to use good quality matcha. This is actually really going to help accentuate the flavor, which is what we're trying to do. In addition to this, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Once we've added all 3 of these to the bowl, grab your whisk, combine them together until nice and homogeneous so we can add them to our wet ingredients. Now it's time to add our dry ingredients to our wet ingredients. So make sure our wet ingredients are still thoroughly mixed and haven't separated, and then we're going to slowly add the dry ingredients in thirds until completely mixed. Make sure they're well incorporated before adding additional amounts. Slowly add them until completely combined. Once we have added all of our dry ingredients into our wet, we'll make sure they're thoroughly combined, making sure to collect as much of the matcha powder that's stuck up on the sides of the bowl as possible. And once they're thoroughly mixed, put them aside so we can start working on our egg whites. Now onto our egg whites. Remove your bowl of egg whites from the fridge and attach them to your stand mixer with the whisk attachment and begin to whisk on low speed until the egg whites begin to bubble. Once you see this, add 30 grams of caster sugar and increase the speed to medium-high and allow to whisk for a minute or 2 until combined. And then we're going to add an additional 30 grams of caster sugar in increments and allow to whisk on high speed until stiff peaks begin to form. You'll know stiff peaks have been achieved when you get a white glossy look, and when lifting the whisk attachment, they don't collapse onto themselves. It's now time to fold them into our previous mixture. Now don't make the same mistake I did and leave your whisk in this mixture while working on your egg whites. It was incredibly sticky and very difficult to get off. So once you've mixed this in the previous step, leave your whisk on the outside and we'll come back to it and whisk it again once we're ready to fold in the egg whites. Once you've managed to remove all the mixture from your whisk, it's time to fold in the egg whites into this mixture in increments. We're going to make sure that we're folding it over itself rather than mixing or stirring, as this is what's going to allow the egg whites to maintain their light, fluffy airiness and give the chiffon its shape. This can be quite tedious, but it's a really important step to make sure the chiffon remains light and airy. Mix these together until all combined and completely homogeneous, and then it's time to add this to our chiffon pan. Now, for those unaware, a chiffon cake is baked in a very specific chiffon pan. It's an aluminium pan with a removable base and a cylindrical centerpiece, which allows for even cooking throughout the entire cake. Now, we don't actually grease these pans because the chiffon is so light and airy. As it rises, it can collapse on itself. So leaving this pan ungreased means as it cooks and rises, it sticks to the outside of the pan and doesn't fall back on itself. We're going to pour the chiffon mixture into the pan in roughly one spot rather than all around the pan, as this will reduce the amount of air pockets that are formed as we're adding it to the mixture. Air pockets are going to affect the final texture of the cake, so we try to avoid that as much as possible. Once all the mixture has been added to the pan, we're going to use a skewer and tilting to spread it around. The purpose of the skewer is to remove as many air pockets as possible, as this is what's going to affect the final texture of the cake. Once we have this spread nice and evenly in our pan, we're going to add it to our oven at 170 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes until a skewer comes out nice and clean once tested. While our cake is cooking, it's time to make our ganache. Grab a small saucepan over medium heat and add 300 ml of heavy cream. Then, to try and get that maple flavor, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. And then in addition to this, we're also going to add a tablespoon of vanilla essence and keep continuously stirring over medium-high heat so a skin doesn't form. And once this is nice and warm, we are going to add it to 400 grams of chopped white chocolate and allow that to sit for a moment or two before we begin to mix them together. Begin whisking your white chocolate and cream mixture together and continuously mix until all the white chocolate has been completely melted. That's all there is, honestly, to a ganache. Once that's completely done, we're going to cover that with cling film and place that in the fridge or freezer to cool and thicken before we pour it over our cake. Once our cake is completely cooked, we're going to give it a light tap on the counter to shock the cake and stop the cooking process. And we're going to find something to balance it on upside down to allow it to cool. This is because the chiffon is so light and airy that if allowed to cool right way up, the weight of the cake can cause it to collapse. Once the cake is completely cooled, it's time to remove it from the pan, which is easiest done with an offset spatula or a knife. Just run around the outside. Now, you'd think because we didn't grease this pan, it would be super stuck and very difficult to remove, but because the chiffon is so light and airy, once you tip it upside down, it falls straight out. Once you've done this, we then just have to remove it from the removable base, which is done the exact same way that we do from the pan itself, which is just with the offset spatula or knife, just wedged and run around the outside. Once the ganache has cooled and set and the cake is completely cool, it's time to pour the ganache over the top of the cake. Leave it on the wire rack with a bowl or plate underneath to catch the excess ganache and slowly pour it over the entirety of the cake.
With me are Alex and Christina, my official cake testers. Yes, they are wearing shirts. No, they will not take them off. They're here to try the maple ganache on the Matcha Chiffon, and they'll rate it out of 10 with me, whether they like the cake, whether they can taste the matcha, taste the maple, and then we'll take an average, and that'll go on our leaderboard. All right, let's try our cakes.
Yeah.
All right, add your ratings now.
Bro, how hard is this?
Alright.
And reveal in 3, 2, 1. Alex scored a 5, myself 7.5, and Christina a 6.5.
So, I do like the matcha, like the hint of matcha, but I think the ganache overpowers it. It's very sweet. But I definitely can taste the maple with slight hints of the matcha.
Yeah, definitely agree. The matcha, you still get that matcha flavor, but the sweetness from the ganache is pretty overpowering. So, but I think if you had a sweet cake along with that sweet ganache, it would probably be too sickly sweet.
Yes.
So I think that bitterness of the matcha kind of helps
Balance it.
offset some of the sweetness of the ganache,
Yeah.
which is why I said 7.5, because I actually really like that cake.
So I really like the maple ganache. It reminds me of sticky date pudding and butterscotch sauce. It is a little bit sickly, but I probably gave the rating because I don't love the cake type. I think it's a bit too airy for me. The chiffon, I probably prefer something a little bit more dense, or like a cheesecake, or just personal preference. The flavors really came out though, so the matcha you could really taste, the maple you could definitely taste. It just wasn't my personal favorite cake.
Thank our brave volunteers for taking on this task. We'll add this to the leaderboard, and we'll see you later.
See you next time.
Well, overall, I would say the Matcha Chiffon with the maple ganache was a success. It was a really tasty cake. Really could taste the matcha, could taste the maple. The maple did kind of overshadow some of the matcha. It was very, very sweet with the ganache and maple syrup, the combination of two different sweet things. But I think the flavors themselves went quite well together. I think that if we were just doing this again, we would use hopefully a different frosting that's not quite as sickly sweet. Maybe with the ganache, add some more air into it so it's just less sweet. So ratings wise, we had a 6.5, 7.5 and a 5. Overall that was 19 out of 30, or average of 6.3 out of 10. So we have our scores written up. We'll go up onto the board. Pretty sad at the moment, but we're going to build to this each week. We're going to add, we'll create our leaderboard, and then once this starts to fill up, we'll do a best of the best, and we'll rate them all and see, which one's better than the others. So yeah, the sweetness of the ganache and the slight bitterness of the matcha, they actually went really, really well together. Not sure. Comment down below what frosting you think would probably go better with the matcha to help complement it, or what other flavor you think would go better with a maple ganache. We'll try and offset some of that sickly sweetness. Let me know what you think, and maybe we'll put that together at some point in the future video. But now it's time to roll for our next cake. Okay, time to roll for our next cake. So we'll start with cake type. 12. Flourless. All right, good start. Cake flavor. 15. Almond. Flourless almond cake. Not bad. Okay. Frosting type. 11. German buttercream. Okay, like a regular buttercream, but made with, I believe, pudding or vanilla pudding mix. And now the flavor. 5. Berry. Okay, a berry German buttercream. Right, what berry I choose? Maybe that's up to you. Comment down below whichever berry is commented the most. Maybe that's what I make the frosting out of. If I have no comments, then I'll choose whichever berry I feel like I want to taste in my cake the most. But that concludes the rolls for the end of the week. So we have a flourless almond cake with a berry German buttercream. I don't know how I feel about this, but I guess we'll see next week how that goes. Tune in for next time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know how you want me to see to do the rolls. And please let me know what berry you'd like me to include in that frosting. Or multiple berries, doesn't have to be one. Hope you enjoyed the first episode of Roll for Cake. If there's anything else you'd like to see, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how you'd like to see the rolls, what berry you'd like me to put in the cream. Doesn't have to be one, could be multiple. Make a mix mash to get some fun flavors. I won't be putting a shirt on, so again, don't bother with that. And I'll see you guys next week for a flourless almond cake with a berry German buttercream. Thanks.